My former high school in Canberra, Darramarlin College, had recently named a brand new theatre after my old drama teacher, Joe Woodward. Even better, he's still teaching there. This man has a lot of wisdom to share. So I headed back to my hometown and sat down with him in the Joe Woodward Theatre.
In the late 1975, a friend of mine had been producing a show called Number 96, and I think The Box as well. They're two serials that were quite popular. He said, "You've got to come down to Sydney to see this show." I said, "Why? What's it?" He said, "You just got to come down to see it." And I said, "Oh, you're right." So we organised and I drove down to Sydney to see this show called Flowers by Lindsay Kemp, which was based on Jean Genet's Our Lady of the Flowers. And it was mostly like Butoh style, mime, extravagant, mostly nude.
Oh, wow.
And the opening.
And you were sold? You saw the nudity and you're like...
No, I was terrified.
No.
I'm standing out there and all these bald-headed blokes, bare chest, beating drums, and on the walls there's all these newspaper cuttings with naive, kiddie-like drawings of murder and stuff. And I'm looking at it thinking, this is just the most amazing, terrifying thing that I'd ever experienced. And at the end of it, I was just so shaken. It was what I had been discussing and looking at in sociology and philosophy, this idea of shaking your paradigms of thinking, shaking your ways of seeing the world. And immediately I thought, that's what theatre can do. I was finding working in theatre was getting tougher because there was a lot of travel to get jobs, and I had a family at this stage. And I read about Marsden, the guy who wrote Tomorrow When the World Began.
Oh, yeah, John Marsden.
John Marsden,
yeah.
And he was an English teacher and he ran a school and he writes books. I said, oh, so you can do the arts and still keep teaching and doing other things. I came to understand a lot of what extreme anxiety was, particularly when I couldn't breathe. And I can remember feeling as if the ceiling was caving in the middle of the night, and I'd have these dreams about being an escapist, trying to get out from tunnels, and it was all closing in. And that sense was becoming very real at different times. But there is such a thing as like a chronic depression. It's where you're not really depressed so much, or you're not aware of it. But I am aware then when things going along, the joy is going, at those moments, right, when you feel the joy isn't there. There are very real things that you've got little control over at times, and they're going to play on your life. Being aware of that, and particularly in this sort of job, and a lot of people do their art. Why? So they can get some kind of sense of balance in this absurd, crazy world.
Yes.
The terror of going out in front of people watching you, and if you're not in quite the right way at that time, it can be an incredibly frightening thing. Well, I used to run a venue in Canberra, the Pits, the Pie in the Sky. I was at the Canberra Rex. And after being, I was director of a company called Jigsaw down here.
Yes.
I had 3 years teaching in Brisbane before that, but that was all. Not in Brisbane, in Queensland. And so I was really interested in some aspects of theatre, and I came down, I was director of Jigsaw, then another group called Stagecoach, which was community organised, and it wasn't professional, but it was for training and for providing experiences for young people, mainly, some adults as well. So the only connection I had with Darramarlin was that one of our bouncers went to Darramarlin. And we had a big fight there one night at the Pits in 1984, and we found this guy applied to be a bouncer, and he had just left Darramarlin the year before, and that was when I first heard of Darramarlin.
No way.
And then a few years later, talking about Anne, I was finding working in theatre was getting tougher because there was a lot of travel to get jobs, and I had a family at this stage. And I read about Marsden, the guy who wrote Tomorrow When the World Began.
Oh, yeah, John Marsden.
John Marsden,
yeah.
And he was an English teacher and he ran a school and he writes books. I said, oh, so you can do the arts and still keep teaching and doing other things. And so when I saw the job advertised here, I put in a fairly spec application. There's something different about this place. And so when I had the interview with Anne, and it was with Anne, Dennis, and I don't remember who the other person was, I felt really comfortable. I felt really interesting. And so he phoned me and said, look, I'd like to offer you the job as a drama teacher. And I must say I'm taking a risk because I hadn't really taught I only had 6 months in a college, and I had 3 months in a college. That was a Stirling College.
Wow.
And the rest of it was through theatre. I was a trained teacher, but I taught primary school.
Yeah, wow.
So when I came here and I got the job, I found it quite scary at first, because the kids, they weren't like at Stirling College where they're kind of more compliant or something or other. They were very wild, this place, in the first couple of years. Yet some of those kids I still keep touch with from the beginning, like Brian Gamara, who I think he was in year 9 back then, or year 10, and Grant Makara was another one. There's a few of them. Matthew Butters I'm still friends with.
Oh, Matthew Butters.
Yeah, on Facebook.
Right.
Sometimes come across these people.